they knocked at the door, which was opened by a very good-natured-looking lady, who asked what brought them there. Hop-o'-my-Thumb told her that they were poor children who had lost their way in the forest, and begged that she would give them a bed till morning. When the lady saw that they had such pretty faces, she began to shed tears and said, "Ah, my poor darling, you do not know what you are come to. This is the house of an ogre who eats up little boys and girls." "Alas, madam, what shall we do? If we go back to the forest, we are sure to be torn to pieces by the wolves. We would rather therefore be eaten by the gentleman. Besides, when he sees us, perhaps he may take pity on us and spare our lives." The ogre's wife thought she could contrive to hide them from her husband till morning, so she let them go in and warm themselves by a good fire, before which there was a whole sheep roasting for the ogre's dinner. There came a loud knocking at the door. This was the ogre come home. His wife hurried the children into the bed and told them to lie still, and she let her husband in. It's a good thing that ogres don't exist anymore, because ogres were not good to human children, though they loved their own. And this ogre was happy to have 7 young boys to feed his guests. So he told his wife they would be nice morsels if she served them up with plenty of sauce. He then fetched a large knife and began to sharpen it on a long whetstone that he held in his left hand. And all the while he came nearer and nearer to the bed. The ogre took up one of the children and was going to set about cutting him to pieces, but his wife said to him, "What in the world makes you take the trouble of killing them tonight? Will it not be time enough tomorrow morning? You have got so much meat in the house already. Here is a calf, 2 sheep, and half a pig." "True," said the ogre. "So give them all a good supper, that they may not get lean, and then send them to bed." The ogre sat down to his wine, very much pleased with the thought of giving his friends such a dainty dish. This made him drink rather more than common, and he was soon obliged to go to bed himself. Now the ogre had 7 daughters, who were all very young, like Hop-o'-my-Thumb and his brothers. These young ogresses had fair skins because they fed on raw meat, like their father, but they had small grey eyes, quite round and sunk in their heads, hooked noses, wide mouths, and very long, very sharp teeth, standing a great way off each other. They were too young as yet to do much mischief, but they showed that if they lived to be as old as their father, they would grow quite as cruel as he was, for they took pleasure already in biting young children. The ogresses had been put to bed very early that night, and every one of them had a crown of gold. There was another bed of the same size in the room, and in this the ogre's wife put the 7 little boys, and then went to bed herself along with her husband. Now Hop was afraid that the ogre would wake in the night and kill him and his brothers while they were asleep. So he got out of bed in the middle of the night as softly as he could, took off all his brothers' nightcaps and his own, and crept with them to the bed that the ogre's daughters were in. He then took off their crowns and put the nightcaps on their heads instead. Next he put the crowns on his brother's head and his own, and got into bed again. He expected, after this, that if the ogre should come, he would take him and his brothers for his own children. Everything turned out as Hop wished. The ogre waked soon after midnight, and began to be very sorry that he had put off killing the boys till morning. So he jumped out of bed and took hold of his large knife. "Let us see," said he, "what the young rogues are about, and do the business at once." He then walked softly to the room where they all slept, and went up to the bed the boys were in, who were all asleep except Hop. He touched their heads one at a time, and feeling the crowns of gold, said to himself, "Oh, I nearly made a terrible mistake. I must have drunk too much wine last night." He went next to the bed that his own little ogresses were in, and when he felt the nightcaps, he said, "Aha! Here you are, my lads!" And so in a minute he cut the throats of all his daughters. He was very much pleased when he had done this, and then went back to his own bed. As soon as Hop heard him snore, he woke his brothers and told them to put their clothes on quickly and follow him. They stole down softly into the garden and then jumped from the wall into the road. They ran as fast as their legs could carry them, but were so much afraid all the while that they hardly knew which way to take. 7-league boots are very tiresome to the person who wears them, so the ogre now began to think of resting, and happened to sit down on the very rock where the poor children were hid. As he was so tired, and it was a very hot day, he fell asleep, and soon began to snore so loudly that the little fellows were terrified. When Hop saw this, he said to his brothers, "Courage, my brothers, never fear. You have nothing to do but to steal away and get home while the ogre is fast asleep, and leave me to shift for myself." The brothers were very glad to do whatever he told them, and so they soon came to their father's house. In the meantime, Hop o' My Thumb went up to the ogre softly, pulled off his 7-league boots very gently, and put them on his own leg. For though the boots were very large, yet being fairy boots, they could make themselves small enough to fit any leg they pleased. And when he'd put on the boots, Hop took one step, and he was at the ogre's house. And when he told the ogre's wife what had happened, she gladly gave him all the ogre's gold. And Hop took it, and took one large step, and he was home at his cottage. And the ogre was so ashamed that he never bothered anyone again. But the best part of this story was when Hop and his brothers got home to the cottage. They found that their grandmother, hearing about the children's situation, had come to stay with them. And they all lived happily, and all 7 boys grew up to be hard-working and honest men.